My dad kicked me in the ribs in front of my kids and said, "You're nothing." He didn't know my lawyer recorded everything. I still remember the exact weight of my father's boot, size 11 work boot, steel-toed, when it connected with my ribs. I remember the sound my breath made leaving my body. I remember my 7-year-old daughter Emma's scream. And I remember thinking, as I lay there on the cold kitchen floor of my childhood home, that this was the moment everything would change. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really started. My name is Jordan. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that family meant loyalty. That blood was supposed to be thicker than water, that you sacrificed for the people who raised you, no matter what it cost you. I believed all of that right up until the moment my father's boot made contact with my ribcage, and I heard my daughter's voice crack with terror. See, I'd been the responsible one. The one who dropped out of college when my grandmother got sick. The one who worked 2 jobs to help keep the family restaurant afloat when Dad's gambling problem got out of control. The one who co-signed loans, who lent money I didn't have, who always put my family first. My younger brother Tyler, golden child, football star, could do no wrong. He'd been different. Dad had remortgaged the house to pay for Tyler's private coaching, his sports medicine treatments, his showcase tournaments. When Tyler's shoulder injury ended his college career freshman year, Dad had drained my college fund, the one Grandma Helen had left specifically for me, to open a sports equipment store for Tyler. "He needs this," Dad had said. "You can always go back to school later." I was 20 at the time. I never went back. Instead, I got married to Lucas, had Emma. Then 3 years later had my son Carter. I worked as a medical billing specialist, making decent money, enough to support my kids and even help my parents when they called, which was often. The pattern had been set for over a decade. Dad would call, voice tight with stress. "Jordan, we need $3,000 for the restaurant's health inspection fees." Or, "Jordan, your mother's car broke down. We need $1,500 for repairs." And I'd transfer the money every single time from the joint account Lucas and I shared. Lucas had started questioning it about 2 years ago. "Jordan, that's the 4th time this month your dad has asked for money. When are they going to pay us back?" "It's family," I'd said, using the magic words that were supposed to end all arguments. "They'd do the same for us." But they wouldn't. And deep down, I think I always knew that. The breaking point came on a Saturday in October. Emma had been saving for 6 months, doing extra chores, selling friendship bracelets at school, to buy this specific art set she'd seen. $147, with professional-grade colored pencils, watercolors, and sketching paper. She'd counted her money that morning, her face glowing with pride. "I finally have enough, Mom. Can we go to the art store after we visit Grandma and Grandpa?" I'd hugged her tight, my heart swelling. "Absolutely, sweetheart. You worked so hard for this." We'd planned to stop by my parents' house for a quick lunch. Just an hour. Then we'd head to the art supply store before they closed at 3. Simple. Easy. I should have known better. We arrived at noon. Mom was in her usual spot at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, barely looking up when we walked in. "Oh, you're here," she said, her tone flat. "Tyler's running late. He's showing some investors the new location." The new location. Tyler's 3rd attempt at making his sports equipment business work. The first location had closed after 8 months. The second had lasted barely a year. And now, somehow, there was money for a 3rd. "That's great," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Emma and Carter were already in the living room. Emma showing Carter her money in its carefully labeled envelope. I could hear her explaining to him how long it had taken to save. Dad walked in from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. His eyes, always calculating, always assessing what he could get from you, landed on me. "Jordan." "Good. I need to talk to you." My stomach dropped. Those words, I'd heard them 100 times, and they always meant the same thing. Tyler needs $22,000, Dad said, not even bothering with small talk. The investors are ready to move forward, but he needs to show he's got skin in the game. We're going to take it from the equity line on the house, but we need you to co-sign. I felt something inside me go very still. Dad, I've co-signed 3 times already. Lucas and I are barely making our own mortgage payments. This is different, he said, and his voice had that edge to it, the one that meant disagreement wouldn't be tolerated. This is Tyler's real shot. The other locations, those were learning experiences. This time, he's got a solid business plan. Real investors. This is going to work. You said that about the last 2 locations. His face darkened. Are you calling your brother a failure? I'm saying I can't keep putting my family's financial security at risk. We're your family, Jordan. His voice rose, and I saw Mom's head jerk up from her phone. But she didn't intervene. She never did. After everything we've done for you, you're going to turn your back on your brother when he needs you most. I thought about Emma's art set. I thought about Carter's upcoming birthday and the bicycle he'd been hoping for. I thought about the orthodontist telling us last month that Emma would need braces next year, and how Lucas and I had been trying to save for that. I thought about the credit card debt we were still carrying from the last time I'd helped my family. I can't, I said quietly. Not this time. The silence that followed was like ice water. Mom stood up from the table, her expression a mixture of disappointment and something else, something harder. Jordan, we raised you better than this. Better than what? Better than protecting my own children's future. Better than being selfish. Tyler's voice came from the doorway. I turned to see my brother standing there, looking every inch the victim in his expensive athletic wear and designer sneakers. You've always had a job, always had stability. You don't know what it's like to have a dream and watch it almost slip away because your family won't support you. The audacity of it nearly took my breath away. Tyler, I dropped out of college to help this family. I've co-signed loans that affected my credit score. I've given money I couldn't afford to give. Don't talk to me about sacrifice. That was your choice, he shot back. Nobody forced you to do any of that. You're right, I said, and something in my voice must have changed because everyone went quiet. Nobody forced me. But every time I did it, you all made it very clear that this is what family does. That I owed you. That good daughters. Good sisters, they put family first. So I did. Over and over. And now I'm saying no, and suddenly I'm selfish. Dad moved closer to me, and I could smell the whiskey on his breath even though it was barely past noon. You're damn right you're selfish. You're thinking about some art supplies while your brother's entire future hangs in the balance. She's 7 years old, and she's saved for 6 months. She's a kid. She'll get over it. Tyler is trying to build something real. I felt my hand shaking. I'm not co-signing, Dad. I'm sorry, but the answer is no. What happened next happened fast. Dad's hand shot out and grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You're going to do this, Jordan. I'm not asking. Let go of me. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You walk out that door without helping your brother, and you're not welcome back in this house. You understand me? You'll be dead to this family. I should have left right then. I should have gathered my kids and walked out. But I'd spent 32 years learning to accommodate, to placate, to smooth things over. So instead I said, Dad, please, can we just talk about this calmly? That's when he shoved me, not hard enough to knock me down, but hard enough to make me stumble backward. And that's when Emma appeared in the doorway. Leave my mom alone. Her voice was high and frightened, but fierce. My 7-year-old daughter, all 4 feet of her, standing up to her grandfather. Dad's attention swiveled to her, and I saw something in his face that made my blood run cold. You need to teach your kids some respect, he said to me, but his eyes were on Emma. Don't, I said, moving between them. Don't even look at her like that. Like what? Like she's a spoiled brat? Because that's what you're raising, Jordan. Spoiled, entitled kids who think the world owes them something. Carter started crying in the next room. The sound of it, my 5-year-old son, scared and confused, it did something to me. It cut through all the years of conditioning, all the guilt and obligation, and left behind something crystal clear. "We're leaving," I said. I turned toward the living room to get Carter, and that's when it happened. Dad grabbed my shoulder and spun me back around. "You're not going anywhere until we settle this. Get your hands off me." I tried to pull away, and his grip tightened. "You ungrateful!" His other hand came up, and for a second I thought he was going to hit me across the face. Instead, he shoved me hard. I went backward, tripped over one of Carter's toy cars that had been left on the floor, and went down. I landed hard on my left side, pain exploding through my hip and shoulder. And before I could even process what had happened, before I could catch my breath, I felt his boot connect with my ribs. Once, twice, 3 times. The pain was blinding. I couldn't breathe. I heard Emma screaming, heard Carter wailing, heard Tyler saying, "Dad, come on," in this weak, ineffectual way that meant he wasn't actually going to do anything. And then Dad leaned down, close enough that I could see the broken blood vessels in his eyes, could smell the whiskey and coffee on his breath, and he said the words I'll never forget. "You're nothing. You hear me? You've always been nothing. Just a worker bee, a paycheck and not even a good one. You're nothing, and you'll always be nothing." Through the pain, through the fear, through the sound of my children's terrified cries, I had one crystal clear thought. I need to make sure he can never do this again. And here's the thing nobody knew. The thing that would change everything. 6 months earlier, I'd consulted with a lawyer. It had started innocuously enough. A friend from work, Sarah, had noticed the bruises on my arms. Not from Dad, from Mom. Actually, who'd grabbed me too hard during an argument about money 3 months before. Sarah had gotten quiet, then said, "Jordan, I know a family lawyer. Just talk to her. Please." I'd resisted at first. You don't lawyer up against your own family. That's not what good people do. But Sarah had been persistent, and finally, more to get her off my back than anything else, I'd agreed to a consultation. The lawyer's name was Rachel Kim, and she'd listened to me talk for 90 minutes straight. About the money, the co-signing, the guilt trips, the escalating verbal abuse, the way Mom had grabbed me, the way Dad had backed me into a corner during an argument about Tyler's second failed business location. His face inches from mine, his fist raised even though he hadn't actually hit me. When I finished, she'd been quiet for a long moment. Then she'd said, "Jordan, I need you to hear me. What you're describing is financial abuse. It's emotional abuse, and it's beginning to edge into physical territory. I strongly encourage you to start documenting everything." "Document how?" I'd asked. "Keep records of every financial transaction. Save every text message, every email, every voicemail. Keep a journal of incidents with dates and details. And," she'd paused, choosing her words carefully, "in our state, we're a one-party consent jurisdiction for recording. That means if you're part of a conversation, you can legally record it without telling anyone else." I'd felt sick at the suggestion. "You want me to secretly record my family?" "I want you to protect yourself and your children," she'd said gently. "Because, Jordan, in my experience, this kind of pattern doesn't get better. It escalates. And when it does, you're going to need proof." I'd left her office feeling like a traitor. But I'd also downloaded a recording app on my phone that day. And for 6 months, I'd been documenting everything. The financial demands, the guilt trips, the verbal abuse. I'd recorded phone calls where Dad had called me worthless. Text messages from Tyler demanding money and calling me a selfish bitch when I didn't respond fast enough. Voicemails from Mom explaining that Dad was under a lot of stress and I needed to be more understanding after he'd screamed at me for 20 minutes about some imagined slight. I'd hated doing it. Every time I pressed that record button, I felt like I was betraying the fundamental trust that family was supposed to have. But Sarah's words kept echoing in my head. You need to protect yourself and your children. And now, lying on my parents' kitchen floor with my ribs, screaming in pain, and my children's terrified cries filling the air, I realized Rachel had been right, because my phone was in my back pocket, and the recording app was running. It had been running since the moment we'd walked in the door. I'd started automatically doing it every time I visited my parents, just in case, which meant everything was on tape. Dad demanding I co-sign for Tyler, the escalating argument, him grabbing me, shoving me, and the assault. Every kick, every word. You're nothing. All of it was recorded. I managed to roll onto my side, gasping for breath. The pain in my ribs was excruciating. Through blurred vision, I could see Emma standing frozen in the doorway, her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Carter was partially hidden behind her, his face buried against her shoulder. Get up, Dad said above me. He wasn't even breathing hard. Stop being dramatic. I looked up at him, at Tyler standing behind him, looking uncomfortable but not intervening, at Mom in the background, her face carefully neutral, and something in me, something that had been bending and bending for 32 years, finally snapped. No, I said. Dad's eyebrows rose. What did you say? I got my hands under me, pushed myself to sitting despite the pain lancing through my side. Every breath felt like broken glass. I said no. No, I won't get up just because you told me to. No, I won't co-sign Tyler's loan. No, I won't keep doing this. Jordan, Mom started, her voice taking on that warning tone. And no, I continued, my voice getting stronger even though I wanted to sob from the pain. I won't let you get away with this. Tyler laughed. Actually laughed. Get away with what? Dad barely touched you. You tripped. I met his eyes. I didn't trip. He pushed me. Then he kicked me 3 times while my children watched. That's not, Tyler started, while my children watched. I turned to look at Emma, at my brave little girl who was shaking like a leaf. Emma, honey, I need you to take Carter out to the car, okay? Take my keys from my purse by the door. Lock yourselves in. I'll be right there. Mom, her voice cracked. Right now, baby. Please. She hesitated, then grabbed my purse, took Carter's hand, and backed toward the door. I didn't look away from Dad until I heard the front door close. Then I slowly, painfully got to my feet. Each breath was agony. I was pretty sure I had at least 1 broken rib, maybe more. But I stood up and I looked my father in the eye. This is over, I said quietly. Dad's face flushed red. You're damn right it's over. Get out of my house. You're not my daughter anymore. Fine by me, I said. And then I added, almost conversationally, just so you know, I recorded everything that just happened. The room went absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Tyler was the first to react. You what? I pulled my phone from my back pocket, held it up so they could see the recording app still running, the timer showing 43 minutes. I've been recording since we got here. This state is one-party consent, which means it's completely legal. I recorded you demanding I co-sign Tyler's loan. I recorded you grabbing me, shoving me, and I recorded you assaulting me in front of my children. Dad's face went from red to white in about 2 seconds. You had no right. I had every right. Like I said, one-party consent. I was part of the conversation, so I could legally record it without telling you. And now I have evidence of assault, domestic violence in front of minors, and child endangerment. Mom found her voice. Child endangerment? You're being ridiculous. The kids are fine. The kids watched their grandfather beat their mother. They're traumatized. That's textbook child endangerment. I turned back to Dad, and I let him see everything I was feeling. The pain, the anger, the absolute certainty. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk out of here. I'm going to take my kids to the hospital and get my ribs checked. And then I'm going to file a police report and press charges for assault. You wouldn't dare, Dad breathed. Watch me. I started walking toward the door, each step sending pain shooting through my torso. And Dad, that money you stole from my college fund to open Tyler's first store? I have documentation of that too. Bank statements showing the withdrawal from the trust Grandma Helen set up specifically for my education. Text messages where you admitted you used it for Tyler. That's conversion of trust assets. Also illegal. Tyler's voice rose to a near shout. You can't do this to us. We're your family. I stopped at the door, one hand on the frame to steady myself. You should have thought about that before you stood there and watched him beat me. You're a coward, Tyler. You've always been a coward. And Mom, I looked at her. You enabled this. Every time you made excuses for him, every time you told me to be understanding, you enabled abuse. That makes you complicit. Jordan, if you do this, you'll destroy this family, Mom said, and there were actually tears in her eyes. But I was done being manipulated by tears. No, Mom. Dad destroyed this family the moment he decided his anger was more important than his daughter's safety. I'm just making sure there are consequences. I walked out. The drive to the hospital was a blur of adrenaline and pain. Emma sat in the back seat with Carter, holding his hand, her face pale and drawn. Every few seconds, she'd look at me in the rearview mirror like she was checking to make sure I was still okay. I'm all right, sweetheart, I kept saying, even though I very clearly wasn't. He hurt you, she whispered. Grandpa hurt you really bad. I know, baby, but it's going to be okay. I promise. Lucas met us at the emergency room. I'd called him from the car, and he'd broken every speed limit getting there. His face when he saw me, when he took in the way I was holding my side and could barely breathe, I'll never forget the look in his eyes. What happened? He asked, his voice tight with controlled fury. Later, I said, can you take the kids to the waiting room? I need to. I had to stop talking because the pain was too intense. A nurse was already approaching with a wheelchair. The ER doctor, a woman in her 50s named Dr. Patricia Martinez, was gentle but thorough. X-rays showed 3 fractured ribs, significant bruising along my left side, and a small contusion on my kidney that would need monitoring. How did this happen? She asked as she examined the boot-print-shaped bruise that was already forming on my ribcage. I'd prepared myself for this moment. My father assaulted me, in front of my children. Her hand stilled for just a second. Then she said very carefully, I need to ask you some questions. Standard protocol for suspected domestic violence cases. It's not suspected, I said. It's confirmed, and I have video evidence. That got her full attention. She called in a social worker, a kind-faced woman named Monica, who specialized in family violence cases. And for the second time that day, I told the whole story, this time showing them the recording. Watching them watch the video was surreal. Dr. Martinez's jaw tightened when my father kicked me the first time. By the third kick, Monica's hand was over her mouth. When it got to the part where he said, You're nothing, I saw Dr. Martinez's eyes fill with tears. This is clear-cut assault, Monica said when the video ended. Domestic violence, witnessed by minors. You need to file a police report immediately. Like right now. I plan to, I said. Good. She handed me a folder full of information. Here are resources, domestic violence shelters, counseling services for you and your children, legal aid information. I'm also going to connect you with a victim advocate who can walk you through the criminal justice process. A police officer arrived within the hour. Officer James Morrison, mid-40s, with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that must have been deliberately cultivated for dealing with trauma victims. He took my statement, watched the video, and his expression hardened with each passing minute. Nam, I'm going to be straight with you, he said when the video finished. This is one of the clearest cases of assault I've seen. With this video evidence and your medical documentation, the DA is going to want to prosecute. Are you prepared for that? Because it's not going to be easy. Family cases never are. I'm prepared, I said. My children watch their grandfather beat me and tell me I'm nothing. I'm done protecting him. Officer Morrison nodded slowly. Then we're going to move forward. I'll need to take your phone as evidence. We'll get you a receipt and return it when the case is closed. And I need to ask, do you feel safe going home? Is there any chance your father or other family members might try to retaliate or contact you? I hadn't even thought about that. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, and exhaustion was setting in. I don't know. Lucas, who'd been sitting silently beside me this whole time, spoke up. We'll stay at my parents' house tonight. They live on the other side of the city. Jordan's family doesn't have the address. Good, Officer Morrison said. I'm also going to recommend you consider filing for a restraining order. Given the level of violence in this video and the threats that were made, I think a judge would grant it. Monica jumped in. I can help you with that. There's a courthouse advocate who can walk you through the process tomorrow morning. Everything was moving so fast. Less than 6 hours ago, I'd been planning to take Emma to the art store. Now I was filing police reports and talking about restraining orders. But I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. Yes to all of it. Whatever it takes to keep my kids safe. Lucas reached over and squeezed my hand. When I looked at him, I saw the same determination in his face that I felt. We're going to get through this, he said softly. You're not alone. You're not nothing. You hear me? You're everything. I started crying then, finally letting the tears come. Because for the first time in my entire life, I felt like maybe I actually was worth protecting. We did go to Lucas's parents' house that night. Janet and Robertson, the kind of in-laws you see in movies and think can't possibly be real. They took one look at me, at the way I was moving so carefully, at Emma's pale face and Carter's puffy eyes, and they asked no questions, just pulled us inside, got the kids settled with warm milk and cartoons, and sat with me while I told them everything. We should have known something was wrong, Janet said, tears streaming down her face. All those times you'd cancel plans last minute because your family needed something. We thought it was just cultural differences in family obligation. We didn't realize they were exploiting you. It's not your fault, I said. I didn't realize it either. Not really. Not until today. That night, after Emma and Carter were finally asleep, Emma in the guest room, Carter curled up in a makeshift bed of couch cushions because he refused to let me out of his sight. I sat down with Lucas and called Rachel Kim. It was nearly 10 p.m., but she answered on the second ring. Jordan, are you all right? The fact that she remembered my name, that she'd given me her personal cell number 6 months ago, just in case, made me want to cry all over again. It happened, I said. Everything you warned me about. It escalated. I have it all on video. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, Jordan, I know this is overwhelming. I know you're in pain, physically and emotionally, but I need you to listen to me very carefully. You just did something incredibly brave and incredibly important. You protected yourself and your children. And with the evidence you've collected, not just today's assault, but 6 months of documentation, we can make sure this never happens again. Officer Morrison said I should file for a restraining order. Absolutely. I'll file the petition first thing tomorrow morning. Emergency protective order, based on the assault and the threat to your safety. With that video, we'll get it. I can also start working on a civil case, recouping the money they've taken from you over the years. My breath caught. Civil case. Jordan, from what you've told me over the past 6 months, your family has financially exploited you for over a decade. The college fund they took, the loans you co-signed that they never paid, the direct transfers of money that were never repaid. That's not just morally wrong. Some of it is legally actionable. We can sue for conversion, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and emotional distress. The idea of suing my own family made me feel sick. But then I thought about Emma's art set, about the braces she'd need. About Carter's birthday. About all the times I'd gone without, so that Tyler could have another chance at his dreams. How much are we talking about? I asked. I'd need to review all your documentation to give you a firm number, but based on our conversations, probably between $60,000 and $80,000, plus interest and legal fees. Lucas, sitting beside me, inhaled sharply. That was more than our annual mortgage payments. That was Emma's braces and Carter's birthday and actual savings for their college funds. Start the paperwork, I said. Over the next few days, everything happened very fast. Rachel filed for the restraining order Monday morning. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Henderson, watched the assault video in chambers. When she came back out, her face was set in stone. Restraining order granted, she said. Mr. Grant is to have no contact with Jordan Chen, Emma Chen, or Carter Chin. No phone calls, no emails, no texts, no third-party communication. He is to stay at least 500 feet away from Mrs. Chen's residence, workplace, and the children's school. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. My father wasn't in court. He didn't have to be for an emergency protective order. But Rachel told me later that when the court officer served him with the papers, he'd gone white as a sheet. That afternoon, Officer Morrison called. Mrs. Chen, I wanted to let you know that the district attorney has reviewed your case. They're filing charges against your father, aggravated assault, domestic violence in the presence of a minor, and child endangerment. Given the severity of the injuries and the video evidence, they're taking this very seriously. What happens now? I asked. There'll be an arraignment within 72 hours. The DA's office will contact you about victim impact statements and what to expect during trial. And Mrs. Chin, the DA thinks they can get a conviction. This video, it's damning. The arraignment happened Wednesday morning. I wasn't required to be there, but Rachel suggested I come. Show the judge that you're serious about this, that you're not backing down. So Lucas took the day off work, his parents stayed with the kids, and we went to the courthouse. Seeing my father in handcuffs was surreal. He looked smaller, somehow diminished. Tyler was there, sitting in the gallery with Mom. Neither of them looked at me. Uncle Frank, my dad's brother, who'd always been his biggest enabler, glared at me with such hatred that I actually took a step back. The charges were read: aggravated assault, domestic violence in the presence of a minor, child endangerment. Dad pled not guilty, which Rachel had told me to expect. Then the DA, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine Walsh, argued for bail. Your Honor, the defendant has a clear history of violence and threats. The video evidence shows a brutal, sustained attack on his own daughter in front of her young children. He poses a significant danger to the victim. Dad's lawyer, an expensive-looking man named Richard Thornton, who Tyler must have paid for, argued back. Your Honor, my client has deep roots in the community. He's owned a business here for 20 years. He has no prior criminal record. The incident was an unfortunate family dispute that got out of hand. He's not a flight risk. Judge Henderson watched the assault video right there in open court. I had to relive every second of it, the kicks, the words, Emma's screams. When it finished, the judge's face was carved from ice. Bail is set at $75,000, she said, with the condition that if bail is posted, the defendant will wear a GPS monitor and is forbidden from any contact with the victims. Violation of the restraining order will result in immediate revocation of bail. Dad couldn't make bail immediately. That meant he'd sit in jail for at least a few days. Part of me felt guilty about that, but the larger part, the part that still felt the ache in my ribs every time I breathed, felt a deep sense of relief. Walking out of that courthouse, Lucas put his arm around my shoulders, carefully mindful of my injuries, and said, "You did it. You actually did it." "It's not over," I said. "This is just the beginning." I had no idea how right I was. The phone calls started that night. First Tyler, then Mom, then Uncle Frank. Then distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, all saying the same things. How could you do this to the family? He's your father. You're destroying us. This is going to kill your mother. I didn't answer any of them, but they left voicemails, dozens of them, each one trying a different tactic. Guilt, anger, manipulation, bargaining. Tyler's voicemail was particularly memorable. Jordan, this is insane. Dad made a mistake, okay? He was stressed. You can't send him to prison over one incident. Think about what this is doing to Mom. Think about the restaurant. If Dad goes to prison, we'll lose everything. Is that what you want? To destroy the family business? To make Mom homeless? This is on you. All of this is on your head. I played it for Rachel. She listened without expression, then said, save all of these. Every single one. They're evidence of continued harassment and witness intimidation. Witness intimidation. They're trying to pressure you into dropping the charges. That's a crime. If it continues, we can add it to the restraining order and possibly pursue charges. My co-worker, Sarah, the one who'd originally pushed me to see a lawyer, stayed late with me at work one evening about a week after the assault. We were alone in the office, and I finally broke down. I feel like a monster, I admitted. My father is sitting in jail because of me. My mother won't stop calling. Tyler is telling everyone in the family that I'm vindictive and cruel. What if they're right? What if I'm overreacting? Sarah put her coffee down and looked at me with an intensity I'd never seen from her. Jordan, I need you to listen to me. My sister was in an abusive marriage. For 8 years, her husband told her she was overreacting, that she was too sensitive, that she was making a big deal out of nothing. You know what finally convinced her to leave? I shook my head. He broke her daughter's arm. My niece was 6 years old. He grabbed her in a rage and snapped her arm like a twig. And you know what my sister's first thought was? Is this my fault? Did I provoke him? That's what abuse does, Jordan. It makes you question your own reality. It makes you think that your pain doesn't matter, that you deserved it. Tears were streaming down my face. But he's my father. And that makes it worse, not better. He's supposed to protect you. He's supposed to love you unconditionally. Instead, he beat you in front of your children and told you you're nothing. There is no overreaction to that. There is only appropriate response. I cried for a long time that night. For the father I'd wanted to have versus the one I actually had. For the childhood I'd thought was normal, but apparently wasn't. For Emma and Carter, who'd had to witness something no child should ever see. But when I was done crying, I felt clearer, stronger. Thank you, I told Sarah, for pushing me to see Rachel, for believing me, for everything. She hugged me gently, mindful of my still healing ribs. That's what real family does, Jordan. They protect you. They believe you. They don't make you question your worth. Uncle Frank showed up at my workplace 2 weeks later. I was in the middle of processing a stack of insurance claims when my boss, a normally unflappable woman named Denise, appeared at my cubicle looking flustered. Jordan, there's someone here to see you. Says he's your uncle. I told him we don't allow personal visits during work hours, but he's being insistent. My stomach dropped. Call security. I already did, just in case. But he says he just wants to talk to you. I walked out to the lobby with my phone in my hand, recording app already running. Uncle Frank was standing by the reception desk, his face red with barely controlled anger. Jordan, he said when he saw me, we need to talk. Now. We don't have anything to talk about, I said calmly. And you're not supposed to be here. The restraining order prohibits third-party contact on behalf of my father. I'm not here on your father's behalf. I'm here on my own behalf to tell you what a vindictive, selfish... Sir, you need to leave, Denise cut in, her voice firm. Security, a large man named Marcus, had appeared in the doorway. Uncle Frank ignored them both. Your father is a good man who made one mistake, and you're crucifying him for it. You're going to send him to prison because you can't take a little discipline. A little discipline. My voice rose despite my attempt to stay calm. He kicked me repeatedly in the ribs, in front of my children. That's not discipline. That's assault. You're tearing this family apart. He tore this family apart the moment his boot connected with my rib cage. Security was escorting Uncle Frank out now, but he managed to yell over his shoulder, "You'll regret this! You hear me? You'll regret destroying this family." I stood there shaking, my phone still recording. Denise put a hand on my shoulder. "Jordan, are you okay?" "I need to call my lawyer," I said. Rachel's response was swift and decisive. "We're amending the restraining order to include your uncle." That was clear witness intimidation. "And Jordan, this shows a pattern. Your family is escalating because they're scared. They know the evidence is damning. Stay strong." The preliminary hearing happened 3 weeks after the assault. This was the hearing where the DA had to prove there was enough evidence to move forward with the trial. Given the video, it should have been a slam dunk. But Dad's lawyer, Thornton, was good. He tried to argue that the video was taken without consent and should be inadmissible. Catherine Walsh, the DA, was ready for him. She stood up, all 5'3" of her, and delivered a crushing rebuttal. "Your Honor, Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. Mrs. Chen was a participant in the conversation and had every legal right to record it. Furthermore, the recording captured a crime in progress, assault and child endangerment. Even in two-party consent states, recordings of crimes in progress are typically admissible. The defense's argument has no legal merit." Judge Henderson agreed. The video was admitted. The judge took exactly 4 minutes to determine there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Dad's bail was revoked temporarily when GPS monitoring showed he'd driven past Emma's school. Whether deliberately or accidentally, it was a violation. He spent another 5 days in jail before Tyler somehow came up with enough money to post bail again and promise the court it wouldn't happen again. Meanwhile, Rachel was building the civil case. We'd spent hours going through my documentation, bank statements, emails, text messages, voicemails. The financial exploitation was worse than even I'd realized. $83,000, Rachel told me during one meeting. That's what they've taken from you over the past 12 years. The college fund, the co-signed loans they never paid, the direct transfers that were never repaid. We have documentation for all of it. Lucas, sitting beside me, let out a low whistle. That's almost double what I thought. And this doesn't include emotional damages or the cost of your medical care from the assault, Rachel continued. We could potentially ask for up to $200,000 in total damages. The number made me dizzy. Will we actually get it? With this level of documentation, I think we have a very strong case. The question is whether they'll settle or if we'll have to take it to trial. What happens if we win and they can't pay? Rachel's expression was grim. Then we put liens on their assets. The restaurant, the house, any business interests. We garnish wages if necessary. Jordan, I won't lie to you. This is going to get ugly. They're going to fight back hard. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Emma, who'd started having nightmares where her grandfather was chasing her. About Carter, who flinched every time he heard a man's raised voice. About the way I still couldn't take deep breaths without pain 3 weeks after the assault. I'm prepared, I said. The smear campaign started the next day. Suddenly, people I knew from the community, parents from Emma's school, people from my old church, even some distant acquaintances, started looking at me differently, whispering. I found out why when one of Emma's classmates' mothers approached me at pickup. I heard about your situation, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Your father seems like such a nice man. Tyler says you've always been difficult, that you have some mental health issues. My blood went cold. Tyler said what? Just that you've struggled with stability. That this assault thing is really just you trying to extort money from your family. That you've always been jealous of Tyler, and that's not true. None of that is true. She gave me a pitying look that made me want to scream. Well, I'm sure it's complicated. Family situations always are. I called Rachel from the parking lot, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. They're lying about me, telling people I'm mentally ill, that I'm extorting them. What do I do? Document it, Rachel said immediately. Every interaction, every rumor you hear, that's defamation, and we can potentially add it to the civil suit. But Jordan, I need you to prepare yourself. This is going to get worse before it gets better. They're trying to destroy your credibility before trial. She was right. Over the next few weeks, the rumors escalated. Tyler was telling everyone who'd listen that I was on drugs, that I was an unfit mother, that I'd manufactured the whole assault for money. Someone, I suspect Uncle Frank, even called CPS to report that I was neglecting my children. The CPS investigation was one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. A social worker came to our home, interviewed Emma and Carter separately, inspected every room. Emma was traumatized all over again. Carter cried the entire time. But the social worker, an older woman named Patricia, saw through it pretty quickly. Mrs. Chin, I've been doing this for 23 years. I know a false report when I see one. Your children are clean, well-fed, happy, and clearly loved. Your home is safe and appropriate. There's no evidence of neglect. Then why did someone report me? Patricia's face was sympathetic. Because someone wants to hurt you. Because someone wants to make you look like an unfit parent. I'm going to close this case as unfounded, and I'm going to note in my report that this appears to be a retaliatory false report. That documentation will actually help you if this goes to trial. After she left, I sat on the couch with Emma and Carter on either side of me and just breathed. Lucas brought us all hot chocolate, even though it was barely October, and we watched cartoons until the kids fell asleep. They're really trying to destroy you, Lucas said quietly, so as not to wake the kids. I know. Are you sure you want to keep going with this? The criminal trial is one thing, but the civil suit, Jordan, it's taking a toll on all of us. I looked at Emma, sleeping with her head on my lap, her face finally peaceful after weeks of nightmares. At Carter, curled up against Lucas, his little hand fisted in his father's shirt like he was afraid to let go. If I stop now, I said slowly, what message does that send them? That they can abuse me, exploit me, assault me, and as long as they make my life difficult enough afterward, I'll back down? What does that teach Emma and Carter about standing up for themselves? Lucas reached over and took my hand. Then we keep fighting. The criminal trial date was set for January, 3 months after the assault. In the meantime, Rachel filed the civil suit officially. The complaint was 37 pages long and detailed every instance of financial exploitation, every manipulative tactic, every cent they'd taken from me. When Tyler was served with the lawsuit, he left me a voicemail. I almost didn't listen to it, but Rachel had insisted I save everything. Are you serious right now? His voice was shaking with rage. You're actually suing us? For what? Being your family? For supporting you your whole life? You're a piece of work, Jordan. A real piece of work. You know what? Fine. You want to play hardball? We can play hardball. See how you feel when everyone knows what you really are. A selfish, vindictive. The voicemail cut off there, but the message was clear. The counterattack came 2 days later. Tyler filed his own lawsuit against me for defamation and emotional distress, claiming my accusations had destroyed his business reputation. It was a nuisance suit, Rachel assured me. It would get dismissed quickly, but it tied up more time and resources. Mom sent me a letter, not an email or a voicemail this time, but an actual handwritten letter. In it, she begged me to drop the charges and the lawsuit. She said Dad was a shell of himself, that he was on blood pressure medication now because of the stress, that I was killing him slowly. The letter ended with, I know you think you're doing the right thing, but you're not. You're destroying your father, your brother, and me. Is that what you want? To be responsible for your father's death? Because that's where this is heading. His doctor says the stress could cause a heart attack. His blood is on your hands, Jordan. I showed the letter to Rachel. She read it, her expression darkening. This is emotional manipulation at its finest, and potentially witness intimidation. We're adding it to the evidence file. She's trying to make me feel like I'm killing him, I said, my voice cracking. That's exactly what she's trying to do. Jordan, look at me. Rachel waited until I met her eyes. Your father made choices. He chose to assault you. He chose to financially exploit you for years. The consequences of those choices are his responsibility, not yours. You're not responsible for his stress or his blood pressure or anything else. You're responsible for protecting yourself and your children. That's it. But the guilt was eating at me. Late at night, when I couldn't sleep because my ribs still ached, I'd lie awake thinking, what if he does have a heart attack? What if the stress really does kill him? Will that be my fault? Lucas caught me crying in the bathroom one night. He sat down on the floor beside me and said, "Talk to me." What if I'm wrong? I whispered, what if I'm being too harsh? What if family is supposed to forgive, and I'm just being vindictive? Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Last week, Carter asked me if Grandpa Grant was going to come to our house and hurt you again. He's 5 years old, Jordan. He shouldn't have to worry about that. And Emma? She won't sleep without the door locked and a night light on. She's terrified that he's going to come back." I know. No, let me finish. Your family put you in a position where you had to choose between protecting your children and maintaining a relationship with them. They made that choice for you when your father decided his anger was more important than your safety. You didn't do this to them. They did this to themselves. I cried harder, because he was right, because I knew he was right, but it still hurt. The weeks leading up to the criminal trial were a blur of preparation. Catherine Walsh, the DA, met with me multiple times to go over my testimony. She warned me that Thornton, Dad's lawyer, would try to paint me as a difficult, selfish daughter who'd provoked the attack. "He's going to bring up every argument you've ever had with your family," Catherine told me. "Every time you said no to helping them, every perceived slight. He's going to try to make the jury think you're the problem." How do I counter that? By telling the truth, calmly, clearly, without emotion. Let the video speak for itself. You didn't deserve to be beaten, Jordan. No matter what arguments came before, no matter what your family relationship was like, assault is assault. The criminal trial started on a cold January morning. The courthouse was packed. Small-town drama draws a crowd. I saw people from the community, people from my family's restaurant, even some parents from Emma's school, all there to watch my family's dirty laundry get aired in public. Dad sat at the defense table in a suit that looked too big for him. He'd lost weight during the months since the assault. Tyler sat directly behind him, glaring at me with undisguised hatred. Mom wasn't there. Rachel had subpoenaed her as a witness, so she had to wait outside until she was called. The jury selection took 2 full days. Thornton tried to get people dismissed who'd experienced domestic violence themselves. Catherine fought to keep them. In the end, we got a jury of 7 women and 5 men, ages ranging from 24 to 68. Catherine's opening statement was short and devastating. She played the assault video right there in her opening. The entire courtroom went silent as my father's boot connected with my ribs. As he said, "You're nothing." When it finished, Catherine simply said, "The defense is going to try to complicate this case. They're going to talk about family dynamics, about stress, about provocation. But what you just saw is simple. It's assault. It's domestic violence. And it's a crime. Remember what you saw when they tried to convince you otherwise." Thornton's opening statement was exactly what Catherine had predicted. He painted Dad as a hard-working man, driven to his breaking point by an ungrateful daughter. He said I'd always been difficult, always demanding, always causing problems. He said the assault was a momentary loss of control by a man under extreme stress. Yes, my client lost his temper, Thornton admitted. He made a mistake, but this was not a premeditated attack. This was a family argument that got out of hand. And the question you have to ask yourselves is, does one moment of lost control justify destroying a man's life? I wanted to scream. One moment. He kicked me 3 times, while I was down, while my children watched. My testimony came on day 3. Walking to the witness stand, I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Dad wouldn't look at me. Tyler was staring daggers. But Lucas was there in the front row, and that helped. Catherine took me through the whole story. The financial exploitation, the escalating demands, the argument that day, the assault itself. I kept my voice steady, factual, just like she'd coached me. Then Thornton got his turn. Mrs. Chin, you said your father asked you to co-sign a loan for your brother that day. Is that correct? Yes. And you refused? Yes. Even though your family had helped you financially in the past? They had taken money from me in the past. Yes. Money that was never repaid. But you saw it as helping, didn't you? Family helping family. I saw it as being manipulated and exploited. Thornton's eyebrows rose. Manipulated and exploited. Strong words. Isn't it true that everything your family asked of you, you gave willingly? I gave because I was guilted into giving. Because I was told that good daughters help their families. Because I was told I owed them. No one forced you, did they? Not with physical force, no. But with emotional manipulation, yes. So when your father asked for help one more time, you decided you'd had enough? I decided I needed to protect my own children's financial future. And that made your father angry? Yes. Because he felt you were being selfish. Because he felt entitled to my money. Or because he felt abandoned by his daughter when he needed her most. Objection, Catherine cut in. Speculation. Sustained. But the damage was done. Thornton had planted the seed. That I was the selfish one, the one who'd abandoned family. He kept going. Mrs. Chin, you recorded this incident without telling anyone. Isn't that a violation of trust? It's legal in this state. Legal, yes. But trustworthy? Doesn't secretly recording your family show a certain premeditation? A certain desire to trap them? It shows a desire to protect myself and document abuse. Or a desire to build a case for financial gain. Objection! Catherine was on her feet. Your Honor, Mrs. Chen is the victim here, not the one on trial. Sustained. Mr. Thornton, move on. The cross-examination went on for 2 hours. By the end, I was exhausted, my ribs aching from the stress and sitting upright for so long. But I'd held my ground. Dr. Martinez testified about my injuries. Officer Morrison testified about the assault investigation. Monica, the social worker, testified about the impact on the children. Then they played the video again. For the jury. In full. Every kick. Every word. I saw 3 jurors crying. One of the men looked like he wanted to be sick. The defense's case was weaker. They called character witnesses, people from the restaurant, people who'd known Dad for years, all saying he was a good man, a pillar of the community, someone who'd never been violent before. Catherine destroyed them on cross-examination. Has Mr. Grant ever asked you for money? No. Then you didn't see that side of him. Did he ever feel you were disappointing him? No. Then you didn't see his anger. They didn't call Tyler or my mother to testify. Too risky, Rachel explained. They'd just corroborate that the assault happened. Closing arguments were on day 6. Catherine stood before the jury and said simply, you saw the video. You heard the medical testimony. You know what happened. The defense wants you to focus on family dynamics, on provocation, on Mr. Grant's stress. But none of that matters. Because no matter how stressed you are, no matter how angry, you don't get to beat another person. You especially don't get to beat them in front of their children. That's assault. That's domestic violence. That's a crime. Find him guilty. Thornton gave an impassioned closing about family, about stress, about one mistake not defining a man's life. But it felt hollow after Catherine's clarity. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, I couldn't breathe. We find the defendant guilty of aggravated assault. We find the defendant guilty of domestic violence in the presence of minors. We find the defendant guilty of child endangerment. Guilty on all counts. Tyler stood up and stormed out. Several people in the gallery gasped. Dad just sat there, his face gray, like he couldn't believe this was happening. Sentencing was 3 weeks later. Catherine recommended prison time, 18 to 24 months. Thornton argued for probation and community service. Judge Henderson looked at my father with an expression of absolute contempt. Mr. Grant, I've seen the video of your assault on your daughter at least a dozen times now. Each time, I'm struck by the same things, the brutality, the deliberateness, and the complete lack of remorse you showed in that moment. You didn't accidentally strike her. You deliberately, repeatedly kicked her while she was down. And you did it in front of her terrified children. She paused, letting that sink in. You then proceeded to verbally abuse her, telling her she was nothing. Mr. Grant, whatever you think your daughter owes you, whatever financial disputes you had, nothing justifies what you did. You traumatized your daughter and your grandchildren. You've shown no genuine remorse, no understanding of the severity of your actions. Therefore, I'm sentencing you to 22 months in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 14 months. You will also be required to complete anger management counseling, and upon your release, the restraining order will remain in effect indefinitely. Dad's face crumbled. Tyler, who'd shown up for sentencing, shouted, "This is a travesty!" before being removed from the courtroom. I sat there feeling numb, not triumphant, not relieved, just exhausted. Lucas took me home. Emma and Carter were at his parents' house. We sat in silence in the car for a long moment before he said, "It's over." "The criminal case is over," I corrected. "The civil suit is just getting started." The civil suit moved forward 3 months later. Marcus Aldridge, the lawyer Rachel had brought in to handle it, was a bulldog. He'd spent months going through every piece of financial documentation I had. The lawsuit detailed Count 1, theft and conversion of $38,000 from my college trust fund. Count 2, fraud and unjust enrichment of $45,000 in loans I'd co-signed and they'd never repaid. Count 3, intentional infliction of emotional distress based on years of abuse, manipulation, and the assault itself. Total damages sought, $175,000. Dad obviously couldn't defend himself from prison. Mom and Tyler had to carry the weight of the civil case. Their lawyer, a nervous-looking man named David Porter, tried to argue that the funds were gifts, not loans. That family obligations were moral, not legal. Marcus shredded that argument. "Your Honor, Mrs. Chen has text messages, emails, and recorded phone calls where the defendants explicitly promised to repay these funds. These are not gifts. These are loans that were never repaid. Moreover, the conversion of the trust fund was done without Mrs. Chen's knowledge or consent. That's theft, plain and simple." The depositions were brutal. Tyler broke down during his when Marcus systematically went through every time he'd asked me for money, every guilt trip, every manipulation. "Did you ever intend to pay your sister back?" Marcus asked. I meant to. I was going to when the business took off." "But the business didn't take off, did it?" "In fact, it failed. Multiple times. And yet you kept asking your sister for more money. Why?" "Because she was family. She was supposed to help. Even when it put her own family's financial security at risk." Tyler didn't have an answer for that. Mom's deposition was worse. She cried through most of it, talking about how hard Dad had worked, how stressed he'd been, how I'd always been a difficult child. "Mrs. Grant," Marcus said, his voice gentle but firm, "your daughter was beaten by her father in front of her children, and your response was to blame her, to tell her she was destroying the family. Why?" "Because she is destroying the family," Mom said, her voice breaking. She could have just forgiven him. She could have let it go. But she chose to press charges, to sue us, to ruin everything. She chose to protect herself and her children from an abuser. He's not an abuser. He made one mistake. One mistake that put your daughter in the hospital with 3 broken ribs. Mom had no response to that either. The civil trial was shorter than the criminal one, only 3 days. But it was no less intense. Marcus systematically proved every claim. The trust fund theft, the unpaid loans, the emotional abuse. He put me on the stand, and I told the whole story again. This time, Thornton wasn't there to attack me. Porter tried, but he was less skilled, less aggressive. The jury, a different jury for the civil case, deliberated for 2 days. They came back with a verdict: $124,000 in compensatory damages, and, surprisingly, $50,000 in punitive damages because the jury found the financial exploitation to be particularly egregious. $174,000 total. Tyler actually sobbed when the verdict was read. Mom sat there in shock. "How are we supposed to pay that?" Tyler asked Porter in a whisper that carried across the quiet courtroom. The answer, it turned out, was that they couldn't. Not immediately. Marcus put liens on the restaurant and the house. He set up a payment plan that would take them years to complete. The restaurant ended up closing 6 months later, partly because of the financial strain, partly because Dad's conviction had become public knowledge, and people didn't want to eat at a place owned by a convicted domestic abuser. Tyler's sports equipment business, the one I'd refused to co-sign for, never got off the ground. The 3rd location never opened. He moved back in with Mom, who'd had to downsize to a small apartment after selling the house to pay part of the judgment. Uncle Frank stopped talking to Dad entirely. He'd been furious about having to post bail money that he'd never get back. And me? I took the money and I paid off our mortgage. All of it. Our house, the place where Emma and Carter felt safe, was now completely ours. I put $40,000 into college funds for Emma and Carter. $25,000 went to paying off the credit card debt we'd accumulated over years of helping my family. And I used $30,000 to go back to school. At 33 years old, I enrolled in online classes to finish my bachelor's degree. The degree I'd put on hold when Grandma got sick. The degree Dad had stolen my college fund to prevent. The rest went into savings, an emergency fund, a buffer, security. Emma started therapy to deal with the trauma of what she'd witnessed. So did Carter. So did I. Lucas and I went to couples counseling to deal with the stress the whole ordeal had put on our marriage. And slowly, very slowly, we started to heal. Emma's nightmares became less frequent. Carter stopped flinching at loud noises. I started being able to take full breaths without pain, physical or emotional. Dad got out of prison after serving 16 months. The restraining order meant he couldn't contact us, couldn't come near us. I heard through the grapevine that he'd aged considerably in prison, that he was working as a line cook at a diner on the other side of the state. I didn't feel sorry for him. Mom sent me a letter, her 3rd since the civil suit verdict. This one was different from the others. No guilt trips, no manipulation, just sad. "I know I failed you," she wrote. "I know I should have protected you from your father, should have stood up for you, should have been a mother instead of an enabler. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I am sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally see what I did wrong. It's too late to fix it, but I see it." I didn't respond to the letter. Maybe someday I would. Maybe not. I was still figuring out what forgiveness meant to me, what it looked like when someone had enabled your abuse for your entire life. Tyler tried to reach out a few times through mutual acquaintances. He wanted to clear the air, to move past this as family. I declined every time, because the truth was we weren't family, not in any way that mattered. Family doesn't beat you and call you nothing. Family doesn't exploit you financially for decades. Family doesn't manipulate you and then call you selfish for finally saying no. Real family, the kind that matters, is Lucas, who stood by me through every terrifying moment of this ordeal. It's Emma and Carter, who I protected even though it meant destroying the life I'd known. It's Lucas's parents, Janet and Robert, who welcomed us without question and loved my kids like they were their own. It's Sarah from work, who pushed me to see a lawyer even when I didn't want to. It's Rachel and Marcus and Catherine, who fought for me when I could barely fight for myself. That's family. One evening, about 18 months after the assault, I was tucking Emma into bed. She looked up at me with those serious brown eyes and said, "Mom, I'm glad we don't see Grandpa Grant anymore." My heart clenched. "You are?" "Yeah, he was mean. He hurt you, and he scared me and Carter." She paused, then added quietly, "I don't miss him." "That's okay, sweetheart. You don't have to miss him. You don't have to feel guilty about that." "Do you miss him?" I thought about it honestly. Did I miss my father? Did I miss the man who'd beaten me, exploited me, called me nothing? No, I said. I miss the dad I wished I had. But the dad I actually had? No, I don't miss him. She nodded, satisfied with that answer. "I love you, Mom. You're the bravest person I know." I kissed her forehead, my eyes stinging with tears. "I love you too, baby. More than anything." Lucas was waiting for me when I came out of Emma's room. He pulled me into a gentle hug, and we stood there in the hallway of our paid-off house, holding each other. "You did it," he murmured into my hair. "You protected them. You protected us." "We did it," I corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you know, Jordan." Maybe I was. 18 months ago, I'd been lying on my parents' kitchen floor, listening to my father tell me I was nothing, wondering if he was right. Now I knew better. I wasn't nothing. I was a mother who'd protected her children, a wife who'd fought for her family, a woman who'd stood up to abuse and won. I was a college student again, working toward the degree I'd been denied. I was a survivor who'd refused to stay silent. I was someone who'd chosen healing over maintaining a toxic peace. And most importantly, I was enough. I'd always been enough. That night, after Lucas fell asleep, I walked through our quiet house. I checked on Emma and Carter, both sleeping peacefully for once. I looked at the pictures on our walls, Lucas and me, the kids at the beach, Janet and Robert's anniversary party. No pictures of my parents. No pictures of Tyler. That part of my life was over. And standing there in the dark, feeling the steady, pain-free rise and fall of my chest, I realized something. I was free. Free from the guilt. Free from the obligation. Free from the fear. My father had kicked me and called me nothing. But he'd been wrong. I was everything. To my children. To my husband. To myself. And that was all that mattered. Drop a like if this hit you. Subscribe to Reddit Family Stories for more stories like this. And hit that notification bell because the next one might be even crazier. Thanks for watching.